Dear Rentals Club members, thank you for joining us. We now have live from Bali, our friends from Zenguest. We have precisely Andrew Macdonald. Andrew is the founder of the company Zenguest Bali. And we have Baron Jamesson. Baron is the head of operations manager at Zenguest. Together, we'll be talking about what their business is on a usual basis, what they're doing right now with the pandemic. Also, we'll be talking about the challenges and opportunities that they see in the future. So it's going to be very, very interesting, insightful. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome both of you. Andrew, Baron, how are you?
Good, thanks, Thibaut. How are you?
Thank you for having us.
Well, you're most welcome. And I think, it's very interesting to have you, Andrew. We had you a couple of weeks back on a different conference, another conference. So thank you again for your time today. Appreciate it. I know that your insights were very valued by the people who watched the first conference.
Thank you.
So I think we'll be starting talking about the business in general and switching some point to operations. And I think, Andrew, maybe you want to start with the business side of the company. So and we'll be then have you as a speaker now on camera. But can you maybe just start with giving us a quick introduction to your company?
Yes. So we opened the company in 2017 after I'd been running villas myself, 4 or 5 villas for a couple of years. We now have 22 villas, and our main target market is the mid-range villas in Bali, which are about 150 US to 350 US a night. Just as the pandemic hit, we just formed a relationship with a developer in November last year, and just as the pandemic hit, we were ramping up and taking on a lot of villas, 2 or 3 a month. That developer was selling in conjunction with us, offering packaged management services. So we still have the pipeline of about another 35 villas, which are under construction in the next 18 months. And we're finding that interest is now returning, and we have buyers coming back, contacting and asking about return on investment and proposals for villas in Bali. I've done 4 in the last week. So we kind of hit at a sensitive stage when we were just on the rise. We'd hired a lot of people, and when the pandemic hit, of course, we had to, like other companies, cut costs and cut staff, and now we're just waiting it out. So
it's a company again that's Zenguest. So was on a rise when it hit. So, but you guys didn't just stay and waited. So you took action there. So can you share maybe how is it working now during the pandemic?
It's good. I mean, it's much better than we expected. So we have over 80% of our villas are occupied, and actually we just got another one of our the villas that we were finding it difficult to fill that's just been booked.
Wow.
So I think we're up to about 86% now, and we expect to maintain that occupancy for at least the next 2 or 3 months, because these guests are renewing every month. Even though the guest pool is shrinking as guests, no one's coming in, obviously. People are leaving, but it's slow. So we still have a significant guest pool here. That guest pool is made up of people who've decided to stay in Bali over the whole pandemic period rather than go back to their home countries. And that guest pool is mainly Russian now, more and more. So I would estimate it's about 70% Russian. So once we realised we could see that very early. From March, we saw that basically the incoming tourists had dried up. So we changed our marketing. We marketed a lot on Facebook. Some of the Facebook accommodation groups have 20 or 30,000 members. They're big. And we found most of our guests through direct bookings for monthly stays. The rental revenue we're getting is not great, but it's enough to cover costs, and it makes a small profit for our owners. So the owners are happy because they're covering costs, and they have someone in the villa. So that there's, in terms of security, in terms of villa maintenance, etc. The villa is still, in being maintained and looked after and protected.
So it's very interesting that you very actively sort of try to find demand where it was, like Facebook groups, for example. It's something we've heard in different sessions as well, that owners or managers were like keen on saying that, oh, we can't rely maybe on the platforms, on the big online travel platforms to get bookings now, so we have to make do and find other ways. So was it like a main effort conducted by you? How did you get this organized?
Pretty straightforward, because I mean, they're just Facebook groups, very, very active, and so we just posted the villas and also responded to requests which were posted. And so it took a while, and probably each booking took 5 to 6 visits to the villa. So 5 to 6 different guests viewing before we would actually get a booking out of that. So it was quite a bit of work, and there's a lot of questions, a lot of negotiation, because the guests are very well aware of what leverage they have with the huge amount of villas that are empty at the moment. But once we got the guests in, they're there to stay, basically, because once you're in the villa, it's difficult to move. And if everything's going well, if the service is good, if the villa's nice and everything's working, there's not a lot of incentive to move. And even we always expected that there'd be a lot of pushback on the renewals in terms of negotiation for lower rates. But that has happened to some extent, but not that much. We're basically maintaining the rates that we had initially. One thing we did find is that our 1-bedroom villas are by far the easiest to rent out, because people want to basically be living alone. So couples, and even couples we've got a couple with a small child in one villa, they want to have their own place away from other people. So half of our 2-bedrooms we're selling 1-bedrooms, with 1 bedroom locked off. And the only villas that we have unoccupied, there's only 2 of them. One's a 3-bedroom, one's a 4-bedroom. And they're just not popular, because nobody wants to stay in as a group.
I think it's very interesting what you're sharing, because also it's one of the advantages of being on the ground, being like somebody who is able to get bookings, but also actually have a team, or being yourself on the ground and be able to, with the team, facilitate viewings and negotiate and all these kind of things, or even close the doors to other bedrooms to turn a villa into a 1-bedroom, which obviously is not easy if you're a platform, right? So I think it's also, when you're nimble and on the ground, that's sort of an advantage you have, because organizing viewings obviously is kind of tricky if you're not there, if you're even on a different time zone.
Well, for instance, if you're doing it through Airbnb, it's against the terms and conditions to actually arrange a meeting outside the platform before a confirmed booking. So, that is very limiting. And because people are not going to move into a monthly villa without looking at it. It's not going to happen. So it basically rules out Airbnb. Booking.com has an issue in that some of our owners are not really keen for instant booking at this time. They're a bit worried about who they're going to get, because they're offering at a low rate. Whether it's valid or not, they're worried that they're going to get people who are going to cause them trouble. And so they don't want instant booking, but there's no option on booking.com to screen guests or to talk to them first. So yeah, it's difficult to use the normal OTAs to get this done.
It's interesting. I may have a question as well about domestic travelers. I don't know if you want to address it now, maybe in a
yeah, we can address it now. Yeah.
Because obviously, so you're seeing again, very interesting. You're seeing that the pool, itself, stranded travelers is lowering now. And I was wondering whether, looking at different markets in the region, Indonesia always had a very strong domestic market of people traveling. For Ramadan, there's like a lot of travel happening, not necessarily to Bali villas. But on the other hand, there's a lot of people with money in Jakarta, for example, right? So what you currently, do you have any demand that's from domestic travelers?
It's just starting. It's just starting now. So actually, the place that I rented out yesterday is Indonesian guest. The thing is that Bali has been very difficult to get into. It still is. So even domestically, because as you know, I mean, as you may or may not know, but in Bali, the pandemic is very much under control. There's only been 4 deaths here, and there are very few infections. And when there are infections, it's jumped on because the local community structure with the local community police is very strong and very effective. So one of the things that they've done is been very, very rigid about letting people into the province of Bali, domestic or international. So the ferry crossing from Java is you can't get in unless you have a Balinese residency permit. So that is just starting to open up now, and we're already.
And so to explain to people who've never been, basically it's like one road, or basically one way, one ferry to come physically.
That's right. Yeah.
On the ground from Java to the bigger island to Bali. So if this is closed or controlled, and if there are not many flights coming in, that's it's a pretty very easy way to get a hold of who's coming and going onto the island.
Yeah, that's right. It is starting to open up now, and so straight away we're seeing some inquiries coming in. So hopefully that will grow to be a bigger market.
And does it mean, for example, that you would be switching to Traveloka or Agola's channels, or are these people booking direct? What's still Facebook groups in Indonesian? What do you see here?
Interesting you should say that. I mean, Traveloka, I'm actually talking with Traveloka at the moment. They're much more hotel and say guest house type accommodation. So there's not many. It's not a great villa booking site. We are going to move on to there. Particularly, we've got a few apartments which we think will do well on there. But I mean, Indonesians use Airbnb. I mean, they're very, very familiar with it, and Booking.com very much so. So we think that with those 2 platforms, we're covered.
Very interesting. So in terms of organizing so we talked about the demand, we talked about channels. What else are you doing right now in your business during the pandemic?
Well, obviously we're cutting expenses. I mean, that's something that we started in March. As I said, we cut our team size by about 50%. We postponed all unnecessary spending. And our monthly expenses now are about 30% of what they were previously. And then with the rental revenue that we have coming in, I mean, it's very small compared to what it used to be, but it still covers much of those costs. So we're in a position to sustain ourselves for about 18 months, which hopefully will get us through. And then also we have to continue to focus on customer satisfaction. It's something that because customers can't leave reviews, it's not like Airbnb guests who you're always worried about a bad review, or Booking.com. These customers are direct bookings. They can't leave reviews, but it's very, very important to keep them happy because we need them to renew. Because even if they don't renew and we find another guest, it would typically take 2 weeks to find that new guest. So yeah, we're very keen on getting those customer renewals. And then the other thing is we've got a big focus on owner satisfaction at the moment as well, because some of our owners are pretty down in the dumps. A lot of them have lost their jobs. They have a lot of time on their hands. The last thing we want them to do is start looking around at alternatives for property management. So we just make sure that we keep them very happy. We communicate every week. We update them on what's going on in Bali. And we let them know about their guests, how their guests are going. So yeah, we just keep that communication up, and so far the CASAT has been very, very high.
That's very interesting, Andrew. And for property managers watching the ideas of having to still take care of guest experience, handling homeowners' expectations, property owners' expectations. It's something very familiar and very concrete. I really like it. these are great concrete actions and that people can relate to and learn from.
There's something much more concrete that I missed that we are doing for the owners, which is obviously focusing on their expenses. So our owners are paying operational expenses on those villas. One thing that we've done is we've negotiated with the internet company that we use for all our villas, 50% reduction in internet fees.
Wow.
And also penalty-free suspension and resumption of service. So, and then we look at things like the swimming pool pump and how long it's running for. We've cut it from an average of 7 hours to 4 hours in each villa because that consumes electricity. Various things. We've gone through basically every expense item and cut costs where we can and made sure that the owners know that we're doing that for them and that we're working for them.
That's fantastic, looking at all the expenses side. And when it comes to operations, for example, what has changed in operations? Because I can imagine that, for example, catering to monthly stays instead of short stays, that's different kind of services or fees, or even the new standards, cleanest standards that are now the norm to face COVID-19. This requires maybe some trainings or changes. So how's it like on the operational side of the business?
Okay, so from early March, we had our staff wearing gloves and masks in the villa to give the guests some confidence. And also, of course, we implemented more strict cleaning standards, particularly around touch points and using disinfectants across the villa. With our new guests, because they're monthly, we also only clean 3 times a week. And that's partly to protect the staff and partly to protect the guests from too much contact. But also it's to reduce our expenses because we're getting so much less for the villas. We can't afford to do daily turnarounds on each villa. It also reduces our laundry because if we're only there 3 times a week, the guest only has the chance to give us exchange towels, etc., 3 times a week.
When it comes to the future, what challenges do you see, and how are you addressing these challenges that you have identified?
So we don't see any major challenges due to the virus itself. Unlike hotels, where you have a much more constrained spaces and much more closer interaction with people, we don't think villas are going to be so impacted. And any impacts to do with changes in cleaning processes or maybe, the number of days required between guest check-ins and things like that, they're very simple to handle through just operational changes. We don't see those as challenges in themselves. Where we see the challenge is the obvious one. There's going to be less guests for a long time. So the market is going to be much smaller and we need to work out how to survive and hopefully prosper in this new market. So basically we're doing that through 3 steps. We're looking at our expenses and profit margin and working on those and making sure we have our expenses tightly under control and that all of our contracts with villas are yielding a suitable profit. We want to, like a lot of, I think, villa owners and property management companies, move away from such a dependence on online travel agencies like Airbnb and Booking.com. I think a lot of people got burnt and disappointed and disillusioned when they found, for instance, Airbnb overriding their cancellation policies. And then you get examples of people having their accounts shut down. And, you could, if you're dependent on, for instance, Airbnb, that can be the end of your business. So it's a good wake-up call, I think. It forces us to look more at how we move away from dependency on these online travel agencies to more direct bookings. So that's another thing we'll be looking at. And then the other thing is differentiators. So how do we differentiate ourselves as a villa management company to draw what business there is in a much smaller market? So I'll address each of those points one by one. The first one, in terms of expense and profit margin, first thing we did starting in late March was contract renegotiation. So basically we looked at all of our contracts and some of them were just untenable. because we had, to get our first customers, we had agreed on commission-only contracts. Commission-only contracts we can't support at a time like this because there really isn't very little commission. There's very little commission. So we just had frank discussions with each of those owners, and we came to agreements on temporary contracts to get us through the pandemic, which had a fixed monthly portion. And then we've also agreed that as the pandemic comes to a close, we're going to have another negotiation about what the new contract should look like. And it's not going to look like the old one. They know that. So in a sense, that's some good that's come out of the situation, because those contracts were not really profitable for us. They were what we used to get us started as a company. Staff reduction I talked about. So we're down to a much smaller staff that's given us an 18-month buffer that we can ride things out with. One area where we're actually continuing to spend money, but which will save us money, is accounting and expense management. So we started in December putting in a new accounting system and new expense management processes. When you're managing a lot of villas, you have a lot of separate sets of expenses to manage, and it gets quite complicated. So we're simplifying the whole process, and we're using accountants and a tax consultant who have a very long history with luxury villa complexes. So they're setting up this system for us. It's already pretty much in place, and it's just made a huge difference to us in terms of our visibility and control of our expenses and our ability to jump on things early before they actually become problems, because our reporting is great now. It's also setting us up for our 2021 target, which is to start taking on luxury villas, in the $800 US a night plus market, because the people we're working with have already worked in this area. The owners of those luxury villas are a little more demanding when it comes to accounting and tax management. The other thing we're doing is working with Baron on the operations side, is looking at how we can streamline our operations to make it as effective as possible. Baron's going to give a little bit of a description about. Baron's our operations manager.
Hello.
Hey, Baron.
Hi, Thibaut.
So Baron, thank you for being here. Also, a very quick disclaimer: we of course know each other a bit because we have a history and a good one. So you were actually the villa manager for one of my villas, Villa Adagian, for quite a few years, as well as a social media genius and a good friend, to say this. So it's really interesting to see you now having grown and being this role with Andrew as not only doing operation but streamlining a business. So I'm very, very curious to hear more about what you've been doing in the company for Zenguest. So can you share a bit more with us?
So we began this process by conducting a one-on-one interview with our villa attendants. We need to know whether they master and executed the standard operational procedure properly, right? So days after the interview, I went straight to the field and I worked as a villa attendant, joining the team for 2 weeks.
You were there, so what did you see when you look at the teams, what they were doing on the ground? What did you notice? And you're like, maybe we can do something better.
Well, during the process, I found out there is several variations in executing the standard operation procedure by the villa attendants, and also find out that our villa attendants was sitting around and wasting hours of their time just waiting for the guests to be ready to start the cleaning process. And I noticed there is inefficiency in that process because we give the luxury to our guests to choosing a time cleaning and time cleaning, and allow them to change the request just last minute.
So they can choose whenever they want to have some cleaning, and then they would change it, which is, I would say, kind of expected behavior, normalish behavior. We are found a bit rude anyway, but
For example,
normal.
for example, we like normally we have like standard, and we come like 11 o'clock in the morning. But when we arrive there, the flight attendant arrive. The guests say, "Oh, you know what? Actually, can you wait for another 30 minutes or another 45 minutes?" And then basically we just sitting in the parking lot or in the small alley when we don't have the staff center. We just sitting there waiting, till they allow us to come to the property.
So knowing this, so when you saw that happening again, still now, what was your reaction? What did you do about it?
Well, yeah, I'm using that information. So there's 3 points there. So while we're doing this process, so first our time wasted, right, on standby at the villa unnecessarily. That's one. The second one, the several variations in executing the standard operational procedure by our staff for completing the room, it's end up badly because we need to get in and out the property several times just because we forgot the mop outside or we forgot another towel outside. So yeah, and with this information, so we agree that our villa attendants were not properly equipped to be as efficient as we expected. So what we do is we're setting up the standard for cleaning schedule for each villa, and we're notifying the guests to their agreement on that schedule, so we can allocating our villa attendants accordingly, right? So and then we also updating the SOP and also improve the skill of our villa attendants through creative training.
Oh, creative.
Yes.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so creative training, we have this like a leadership program for our villa attendants, where all the villa attendants equally get opportunity to lead and allow them to grow more productive and take more ownership of what happens on the property.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's not only reorganizing the staff, and I mean, we talked about cutting, staff sometimes because it's something to do for the business with the low demand, right? Also using that time to change operation, retrain people, and also upskill basically, right? Giving ownership to staff. I think it's amazing what you guys are doing at Zenguest. Anything else you other challenges or in the future you guys see?
I just want to add to a little bit about that. I think what Baron's doing, I love it, and I would never ever have the patience to do it myself. I can't believe he stands out in the car park for 2 hours in the baking sun. But he did it every day for 2 weeks and did the cleaning and did everything else as a villa attendant. But this is the only way you actually find out what goes on and can use that. That's the information that's going to form the basis of a much more productive company. And we are actually challenging that assumption that it's very important to guests to be able to decide exactly when you come in and clean. I don't believe that. I don't think that's part of what makes a great villa experience, because look anywhere else around the world, you won't find it. It's only Bali. Look in Thailand, you won't find it because labour costs are higher there. So we just don't agree, and we're going to, using what we found from what Baron's done, we want to tell our guests, look, we can come from 10 to 12, we can come from 12 to 2, we can come from 2 to 4. Which one do you want? That's when we'll be there. If you're not ready, that's okay, we'll come back tomorrow. And I think the guests are going to be fine with that, because as long as they have the right expectation and they can plan around that, I don't think there's any problem there. And I don't think you're never going to get a guest raving about the fact that I love the cleaning service was so flexible. I could tell them to go away and come back whenever I wanted to. It's not one of those things you remember about a trip. So I find this fascinating what Barron's doing, and I think it's going to make us a lot more productive. And we're going to have savings that we can put into things that I think really do constitute great experience for our guests, which I'll go into in a second.
Yeah, yes, Andrew. Also, I love this message. It's like cost saving and better operations, and also probably better satisfaction as well to go to guest experience. Because in a way, if you think, well, I can schedule my cleaning when I want, maybe it's better than just saying, oh, there's randomly somebody knocking at the door, right? So who knows? Maybe actually it's actually better. So on the guest experience side, anything else? So you were about to share more about this. What you're doing?
So what we're doing is, this is something I was going to cover under differentiation, because it's part of what we do to make us an alternative to existing villa management companies and villa stays. It's our 24/7 concierge service. So basically, what we want to offer our guests is a daily cleaning service, which is very thorough, very fast, very professional. But it's done at the times that the guest agrees.
Yeah.
And then that is backed up by a 24/7 concierge that they can contact from inside or outside the villa. We had this operating before the crisis. We've kind of shut it down a bit at the moment because it's not really necessary for monthly bookings. But basically, having that access to someone who can help them and who will get back to them within just a couple of minutes is what we find is important to guests, and we get great reviews based on that. The other thing about the 24/7 concierge is that it allows us to take advantage of, or to do things that other villa companies don't do. For instance, we see the time between when a guest books and when a guest checks in as this largely wasted time in most villa bookings. Most of the time, someone books a villa and then there's basically a message or two exchanged over maybe 2 or 3 or 6 months, and then they check in. We actually use that, and this is what we were doing before the pandemic. We use that time to send a regular stream of messages through to the guest, suggesting, providing options, helping them do their planning. For instance, we'd offer pre-shopping, but not just offer pre-shopping, we'd give them a selection of things that they might want to buy. Because when you just offer pre-shopping, it actually makes things more complicated, because the guest then has to think about what they actually need. But we know what they basically need because we have that experience. So we give them the pre-shopping list and offer to do their pre-shopping for them. At the special occasions, birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, we give them 2 or 3 choices as to how they want to celebrate those, if they want anything special. If they don't, we give them there's a complimentary thing that we do for any special celebration. But we can offer over-the-top packages if they want them. But we basically take the need for them to plan out of it and give them options that we've thought about and that we know other guests have enjoyed. We give holiday suggestions, we give weather updates, we give packing tips depending on the season. If they're coming with kids, we give kid-friendly activities. If they have special dietary requirements, we let them know what around the villa caters to those requirements. What's new around the villa, what new restaurants and cafes have opened that they might want to try. Even things like handy Indonesian phrases or useful cultural tips. Anything that keeps that relationship building over that really valuable time, so that by the time the guest actually arrives at the villa, they feel like they're part of, they have a real relationship with us. They're grateful to us for helping them plan the trip. And in practical terms, if an issue does happen when they're at the villa, they tend to be very, very forgiving, and they won't mention it in reviews. If they do mention it, it will be in a private comment to us that's not made public. So I don't know why people don't take advantage of that period to actually build a relationship with the guest, but with our concierge team, we can do that. And we have a whole range of templates that we use to do that. And then the other thing is that because we have a concierge team, we're very quick to respond to guests. So we respond typically within about 5 minutes. And I think people underestimate what a difference that makes to someone who's asking a question. It's something you don't forget. It's I've got a long background in customer service, and it's one of the things I always drill into people. If you ask a question and you get a response straight away, it means a lot more to you than waiting a couple of hours and feeling like you're just a number in a support centre queue. And you may not even remember what the question was about by the time you get an answer. So we have that advantage. And then during the stay, of course, we have support for the guest 24/7. If there's a problem with the aircon, if they have a problem outside the villa, maybe they have a medical problem or get a wallet stolen, whatever, we have the staff there to help them with that. So we think that that sort of service is what guests will remember and appreciate.
So that's fantastic, because we've been able to cover in this interview to cover so much about so much about basically improving a business, right? Improving a property management business. And in a way, it's not so much about COVID-19 as much as like, well, you know what, let's use this as a way to reorganize, improve, empower staff, improve the guest experience. I think it's really fantastic. And it's some of this probably you had already planned or was already in the pipeline. It just may be happening faster. So it's very, it's very impressive to see that happening. I just want to make sure I'm thanking you for, again, sharing all the insights and tips. And if people want to reach out to you later, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
WhatsApp, definitely. Via WhatsApp or through the website, they can chat with us.
Okay.
Through LinkedIn.
Okay.
Or through our Facebook page. Okay,
so we'll send the links below the video. So, well, again, thank you so much for your time, Andrew. Balon, terima kasih banyak.